Hi, my name is Ozzy Osbourne.
Thank you, Ozzy.
Ozzy Osbourne was never supposed to last this long, not with the wreckage he left in his wake.
And I just got sucked in, and then...
Wreckage he often built himself, the addictions, the overdoses, the canceled tours, the hotel rooms wrecked in a haze of pills and paranoia.
And it's just been... I've had a really charmed life,
By all accounts, his life was a ticking time bomb. But he didn't just survive. He carved out a legacy from the very chaos that should have destroyed him. For over 5 decades, he danced with death and defied the odds, never apologizing for the storm he was. And now, as the world collectively exhales in grief, one question echoes through the silence. What did he whisper to Sharon before the lights went out for good? This isn't just about losing a rock legend. Ozzy Osbourne was more than a voice. He was an ethos, a blueprint, the embodiment of defiant imperfection. While others crafted personas, Ozzy was his persona, wild, broken, painfully honest. And even in his final act, he didn't go quietly. He left the world gasping, heartbroken, wondering how someone so chaotic could have held so many hearts so tightly. Before he was the Prince of Darkness, he was just John Michael Osbourne, a misunderstood kid in Aston, Birmingham, wrapped in a thick accent, tormented by dyslexia, and living in a cramped working-class home where survival was the only dream. He didn't have charisma. He didn't shine in school. In fact, by society's standards, he was invisible. But something churned inside him, something no teacher, no parent, no neighbor could name. It wasn't just rebellion, it was a pressure, a fire, a hunger to be seen. And when he joined Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward to form Black Sabbath, that fire exploded into an inferno that would change music forever. Their sound wasn't polished, it was primal. A slow, heavy, doom-laden thunder that critics despised and fans devoured. They weren't just making music. They were channeling a collective rage and alienation that had never been given a voice. And Ozzy? He wasn't performing. He was unleashing, howling the things society tried to bury. It didn't matter that he wasn't classically trained. What came out of him was something raw and real. And the world had been starving for it. Ozzy didn't become a star by fitting in. He became a legend by tearing the mold to pieces and setting it on fire. While other rock stars curated their image, obsessed over their brand, Ozzy unraveled in front of the entire world, and people couldn't look away. He didn't have to try to be edgy. He was the edge. In the 70s, as Black Sabbath rose to power, Ozzy became more than a frontman. He became the face of metal. But with fame came fuel. It wasn't a reward for him. It was gasoline poured directly into the fire already roaring inside his chest. He stumbled, he spiraled, he collapsed. But each time, he rose again. Not like a phoenix, but like a stubborn storm that refused to die down. He didn't care about the rules. If a bat flew on stage, he bit its head off. If a press conference turned sour, he mumbled something barely coherent and walked away. The press ridiculed him. The public loved him. Because Ozzy wasn't pretending to be anything. He was chaos personified, and he made madness magnetic. But here's the truth the tabloids never told you. Behind that whirlwind of mayhem was a man who took his job more seriously than most clean-cut pop stars ever did. While younger musicians canceled tours for exhaustion or minor sprains, Ozzy hit the stage with broken bones, trembling limbs, and pain that would have hospitalized most people. Sometimes he needed a cane. Sometimes he could barely walk. Sometimes he was wheeled to the wings. But every night, the show happened. Because for Ozzy, performing wasn't about ego or fame, it was a sacred duty. A contract written in sweat, blood, and guitar feedback. While the world laughed at the animal-biting headlines and the slurred sound bites, few saw the hours he spent in rehearsal, the notebooks full of lyrics, the soft hums recorded alone in the dark when everyone else had given up on the session. His survival wasn't luck, it was obsession. Relentless, burning obsession to keep creating. Because under all the destruction, Ozzy knew who he was. He wasn't the chaos. He was the control hiding inside the chaos. There was always precision in Ozzy's madness, something few understood unless they worked beside him. He could recall obscure tour dates from the early 80s, correct setlist mistakes on the fly, and spot a half-second delay in the pyrotechnics mid-performance. People expected a stumbling mess, but he delivered a machine. The man who howled like a beast on stage was also the one who knew every crew member by name, who reviewed lighting cues, and who stayed late in the studio checking mix levels long after everyone else had gone home. Ozzy wasn't a wreck. He was a tactician in torn clothes. The public saw the myth, the caricature. But those in the trenches saw the master. That's why he outlasted nearly everyone from his era. It wasn't just the fans or Sharon who kept him going. It was him, his will, his need, his refusal to become a ghost of himself, because chaos without discipline fizzles out. But Ozzy, he kept burning for more than 50 years, and through every high, every low, there was one constant: Sharon. She wasn't just his wife, she was his North Star. The only one who could stand in the fire with him and not flinch. When he was fired from Black Sabbath and teetering on the edge of total oblivion, it was Sharon who walked into that hotel room, dark, wrecked, reeking of despair, and said, "You're not done yet." She didn't just save him, she rebuilt him. From booking gigs to negotiating contracts to protecting his image when the press tried to bury him, Sharon ran the empire while holding the man together. But it wasn't some fantasy romance. It was brutal, raw, and often on the brink of collapse. There were affairs, fights, rehab stints, public meltdowns. Sharon had every reason to walk. But she stayed, not because she was naive, but because she saw what others didn't. She saw the man beneath the madness, a good man, a lost man, a man who wanted to be better, even when he didn't know how. And together, through pain and perseverance, they became one of the most iconic and complicated love stories in music history. As the years pressed on, time finally began to collect its debt. The decades of damage caught up with Ozzy. His body, once a vessel of pure rebellion, began to give out. The steps got slower. The hands trembled. His balance faltered. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's and endured multiple surgeries that would have sidelined most permanently. For many artists, this would have been the final bow, but not for Ozzy. He didn't go gently into that good night. He adjusted. He adapted. Not because he was in denial, but because he refused to let pain write his ending. In one of his last public performances, he walked on stage with a limp, gripping the microphone stand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. His voice, once a sonic blast, was more fragile, but paradoxically more powerful. Every note was a battle cry, not from youth, but from survival. Fans didn't just cheer, they cried. They weren't just witnessing a concert, they were witnessing a man giving them the last of his soul. Ozzy wasn't chasing applause, he was honoring a lifelong promise to show up, no matter the cost. Ozzy's greatest gift in the final chapter of his life wasn't music, it was honesty. Unfiltered, uncomfortable, courageous honesty. While other celebrities spent their final years sanitizing their image or disappearing altogether, Ozzy opened the door wider. He spoke about addiction with the precision of someone who had survived it for decades. He didn't just say it was hard. He gave you the details, the blackouts, the betrayals, the hospital beds, the fear. He called himself a lunatic. He admitted he should have died 1,000 times, and he owned it. That's what made him different. He didn't run from the past. He faced it, with cameras rolling, with his family watching, with the world judging. He didn't ask for pity. He just wanted to warn people. He talked about depression as a constant shadow, about loneliness that crept in even while surrounded by fans. He admitted that sometimes, even in a stadium full of screaming voices, he still felt completely alone. And that was what endeared him to people. Not his perfection, but his permission. Permission to be flawed, to be afraid, to break down and still come back. He showed that even the darkest souls can carry the brightest light. When the news finally broke, Ozzy Osbourne, dead at 76, the world didn't just react, it paused, it felt. In Birmingham, fans gathered beneath the mural of him, some kneeling, some standing in stunned silence, clutching old Sabbath records, scribbling lyrics in chalk on the pavement. In Los Angeles, crowds swarmed his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, leaving black roses and candles, playing "Mama, I'm Coming Home" from tiny speakers. Across continents, radio stations ran Ozzy marathons. Spotify and YouTube reported surges of over 900% in his streams. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was grief, global gut-punch grief. And the tributes poured in, not just from the metal world, but from every corner of music. James Hetfield called Ozzy the foundation we all built upon. Post Malone, who collaborated with him late in his career, simply wrote, "The honor was mine. Rest easy, legend." Foo Fighters, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, even rappers and pop stars, people who had nothing to do with heavy metal, shared their respect. Because Ozzy didn't just influence a sound, he influenced souls. A tribute concert began taking shape, one Sharon would oversee. Rumors pointed to Wembley Stadium, artists across genres wanted in, and as the plans grew, one truth became clear. This wasn't going to be just a concert. It was going to be a farewell to a force of nature. Behind the scenes, Sharon was already at work. Quietly, carefully, she had been preparing for this moment for years. She wasn't just Ozzy's widow, she was his archivist, his protector, the keeper of his truth. She began work on a legacy foundation in his name, focused on addiction recovery, mental health, and music education, all causes Ozzy had spoken about with brutal sincerity in his final years. But that wasn't all. A memoir was in the works, Sharon's most personal writing yet. Not the glamorous, scandal-filled tabloid version, but the raw story of a man slowly breaking down, refusing to give in. And alongside that book, documentary footage was being compiled. Not the reality show version, not the staged Osbournes, the real Ozzy, the hospital beds, the studio sessions, the quiet goodnights, the whispered apologies, the hand-holding when the cameras weren't there. Because Ozzy didn't want to be remembered as a cartoon or a cautionary tale. He wanted to be remembered as someone who kept trying, even when the world begged him to stop. Sharon will carry that mission. Through concerts, books, charities, and film. Through her heartbreak, she will immortalize the man, the husband, the father, the broken soul who screamed until the world felt less alone. Now, as the noise settles and the headlines turn to the next trending tragedy, what remains of Ozzy Osbourne? Not just the record sales, not just the awards. What lingers is far more personal, etched into the lives of the people he saved without even knowing it. The addicts who heard his voice instead of another bottle, the loners who saw themselves in his lyrics, the kids who didn't fit in and learned they didn't have to. Ozzy didn't offer perfection, he offered truth. And through that, he became a mirror for everyone who ever felt broken and unloved. His greatest performance wasn't Iron Man. It wasn't even Crazy Train. It was survival. Staying alive through overdoses, divorces, relapses, humiliation, surgeries, and shame. To show the world that being a mess doesn't mean being finished. And in that, Ozzy became something more than a rock star. He became a symbol of resistance. Resistance to conformity, resistance to shame, resistance to silence. As fans across the world press play on his songs once more, crying in bedrooms, screaming in cars, raising glasses in crowded pubs, they aren't just remembering a man, they're reviving a philosophy. Be loud, Be broken. Be honest. Be real. And when the silence creeps back in, turn the volume up. Because Ozzy's still there, in the riffs, in the screams, in the silence between lyrics, reminding you you're not alone.